Welcome to the workshop this afternoon. It is the People's Prosperity Guaranteed Income Pilot program that we are going to be discussing today. I'm Ramsey County Commissioner Victoria Reinhardt, and I am chairing this workshop. And what I'd like to do, I know that I think Sia is doing the slides. And first, what I'd like to do is have each commissioner introduce themselves. So I'm just going to call on you. Commissioner McDonough.
Jim McDonough, District 6, East Side of St. Paul.
Commissioner Matas Castillo.
Hi, Trista Matas Castillo, Ramsey County Commissioner, District 3. Good to see you, Munir.
Chair Commissioner Tony Carter.
Tony Carter, Ramsey County Commissioner, District 4, Central St. Paul. Thank you.
Commissioner Ortega.
Rafael Ortega, District 5.
Vice Chair Commissioner Mary Jo McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Mary Jo McGuire, District 2.
And Commissioner Fretham.
Commissioner Nicole Fretham, Ramsey County Commissioner, District 1.
Thank you. And I represent District 7, which is Maplewood, North St. Paul, White Bear Lake, and a little bit of the east side of St. Paul. Okay, we are going to be going through a series of slides. And I'm going, before I hand it off, I want to give a little introduction of who's going to be presenting and the purpose and goal of the meeting today. Elizabeth Tolzman is the Director of Policy and Planning for Ramsey County. Ling Becker is the Director of Workforce Solutions for Ramsey County. Tina Curry is the Director of Financial Assistance Services, Ramsey County. And we have a guest speaker from St. Paul, Munir Karcher Ramos, and he said I was close, Director of Office and Financial Empowerment at the City of St. Paul. And another guest presenter from St. Paul, Casey Wiedrich, Financial Capability Program Manager at the City of St. Paul. So the purpose and goal of the meeting today is to get an update from our guests from the City of St. Paul on the People's Prosperity Guaranteed Income Pilot. And I'm sure we've all read a little bit about it and are really curious about how this is all going to work. But the program provides up to 150 St. Paul families with $500 per month in guaranteed income for up to 18 months. And it was launched last fall by the mayor's office, Mayor Carter's office. So we'll learn what the program is, who's involved in the partnership, its overall process, and what we know of the participants in the pilot, what we are learning, and how the program is being evaluated, which is obviously very important if it's going to be duplicated or replicated. We'll also learn what role Ramsey County has in this initiative, how we are supporting it, and what we can do to help sustain it beyond the pilot from Directors Becker and Curry. So what I'm going to do is, I know we're supposed to be on slide 3, and I'll hand it off to Elizabeth to kick this off, and we will learn more.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for that great introduction, and thank you to the Ramsey County Board for your time this afternoon. We're really excited to be here. Next slide, please. As Madam Chair mentioned, our agenda and outcomes for the day, here will be our presenters for this afternoon's presentation. Next slide, please. I just wanted to start and talk about the role of Ramsey County in this important work and in how we're helping align and sustain these efforts. Myself, the Policy Director, Director Ling Becker, as well as Director Tina Curry, have been invited to be part of the People's Prosperity Pilot Circle of Advisors early on, and we appreciate being invited early and to lend Ramsey County's representation in this really important work. You'll learn in a few minutes here that this Pilot Circle of Advisors also includes representations from foundations and community-based organizations within our local community. So it's a very powerful group of advisors. We've been engaging in monthly meetings with the City of St. Paul and key stakeholders in this work as well. And in addition to the panelists and the speakers that are here today, I also want to acknowledge Ikram Kaliso and Jack Smith, from the city of St. Paul, who have also been part of this working group. They've been a great team to work with, and it's nice to kind of stay updated and informed as part of this process. Another role that we've had is we've been providing kind of technical assistance and guidance on reviewing programs for public assistance and benefits impact. While you'll learn as part of this program that each participant gets to talk with a benefits counselor from Ramsey County, we are able to provide advice or guidance on benefits cliffs or benefits impacts as it results to being part of this program. So it's been nice to be able to connect it there. And then in turn, the city of St. Paul has been doing presentations and keeping our staff and our departments in FAS and Workforce Solutions informed of this process as well. Another opportunity we've been doing is meeting and aligning with the Department of Human Services. As you guys know, many of these programs are obviously state run and funded. And so it kind of goes to our discussion we had last week during our strategic working section where Commissioner McDonough mentioned, where can we impact and influence in this work? And so being able to meet with DHS and having an aligned position or even a legislative platform is really important in our collaborative nature in this work. And in addition to that, we are able to help with the looking at the evaluating the program. Obviously, the program is just being launched and it's still early, but it's been great to look at some lessons learned and be part of that conversation, and we can help improve design and outcomes as we go. And this also gets to the point where Commissioner Fretham, you made last week as well during our strategic session about looking at evaluation, not only from a quantitative standpoint, but also a qualitative perspective. And at our earlier meeting this month, we talked about telling the story, and the impact of this work is really important of that process as well. Then the final point is that we're assessing opportunities for funding support and sustainability. This is a role that, as you know, this is the pilot with the city of St. Paul, and our huge role that we have in this space while St. Paul is leading in this early effort is that, how can Ramsey County help sustain this and continue this work beyond the pilot to the mayor's office. And the last thing I want to mention before I hand it over to Munir is also I should acknowledge our county manager and the mayor has had early conversations about this initiative and project. And so it's been great that our leaders have been engaged early on and that we have a sincere and authentic commitment to work together in this. And with that, I'll hand it over to Munir to talk about more about the program. Thank you.
Perfect. Next slide. Well, first, thank you for inviting us and allowing us to be in conversation, with the council. So, Madam Chair and Commissioners, we really appreciate the opportunity here. Before I start as well, just do want to thank Director Tolzman, Director Becker, and Director Curry, who I've had a pleasure of working with them over the years, particularly when I was at Promise Neighborhood, and then Director Becker, more recently. So it's great to be here and share what we've been up to in the city of St. Paul. So the idea of a guaranteed income actually is not that new, right? So in one of his books, Martin Luther King Jr. Stated, as we see here on the left, "I'm now convinced that the simplest approach will prove to be the most effective. The solution to poverty is to abolish it directly by a now widely discussed measure, the guaranteed income." So widely discussed. This is back in the 60s, widely discussed. So, it's still, it's having its sort of reawakening, right now as we look at, guaranteed income, but it is rooted, in the civil rights movement. It is an idea that was advanced and thoroughly written about by Martin Luther King Jr. And there's a number of economists who've wrote about this, over the years. There's a number of policy folks, who've tried to advance this over the years. Right now, it is really sort of taking root as we look at, cash transfers, cash infusions that have been made at the federal government in response to COVID-19. And then we've seen different pilots, demonstration projects, pop up across the country. But so long story short, it is not anything that is a new concept. It is something, that is sort of in a longer tradition of sort of American sort of economic thought. And we're happy to be part of the leaders in the nation right now as we advance it. So as we talk about guaranteed income, what are we actually talking about, right? So what you'll see up here, this is one probably one of the only times I'll actually read, from the slide here, but for common definitions, so everyone has that a guaranteed income, is a monthly cash payment given directly to individuals. It is unconditional, no strings attached, and no work requirements. A guaranteed income is meant to supplement rather than replace the existing social safety net, and it can be a tool for racial and gender equity. So this is really the operational definition we've been moving on. As different demonstration projects are popping up across the country, this is the way that we have commonly and collectively are talking about guaranteed income. Next slide. So this is really rooted in and really took root, through what is now being called the Mayors for a Guaranteed Income, of which Mayor Carter was one of the founding members. The Mayors for Guaranteed Income is now, the demonstration projects are launching across 30 different cities across the United States, and there's kind of three broader strategies as a part of MGI, or Mayors for Guaranteed Income. The first is to advocate for a guaranteed income at the local, state, and federal level. The second is to invest in narrative change efforts to highlight the lived experiences of economic insecurity. There's a lot of sort of tropes out there about poverty, whether it's the welfare queen or deserving or undeserving, or there's a lot of tropes out there about poverty. So it's really also a narrative sort of campaign as we're moving this forward. And then how do we actually accentuate the realities of folks who are impacting, economic insecurity? And then the third is the Mayors for Guaranteed Income is inviting other cities to join demonstration projects. So again, those 30 plus cities are moving on, starting demonstration projects. Next slide. And for us, how mayors really got involved was sort of a void, that was felt by these mayors sort of in response to sort of COVID-19 at the time by sort of federal leadership. But two, that we had already seen the Stockton Economic Empowerment demonstration, which was the first mayor sort of led demonstration project around the guaranteed income. And they started with 125 residents, $500 a month for 18 months. And what they have found out, in that demonstration project is that folks are spending money like you or I would, and it was on top things around food, sales, merchandise, and utilities, and then auto care, getting, sort of the basic needs that are needing to be taken care of, and being able to have their sort of own economic agency or choice, about where they decide to put their dollars. It is sort of grounded here sort of with Mayor Tubbs and his work, in Stockton, that these other mayors really began to strategically align around and create sort of this national network around. So we're not the first, but we were the second to launch, after Stockton. Next slide. So a little bit on timeline. Mayor announced the People's Prosperity Pilot, like to call it, our PPP program. This was done through executive order on September 3rd. The council approved CARES funding to be used on the 16th. And then we began with our private philanthropic dollars, January 13th. And we're moving an ordinance through the process now. And there'll be 18 cash transfers, that are made with the program demonstration project sort of ending winter, spring 2022, kind of depending on when folks got enrolled. Next slide. Some of our funding partners, there was a national gift given to the Mayors for a Guaranteed Income by Jack Dorsey, who's the CEO of Twitter. He gave a $15 million gift to the network, and that got distributed across the cities. We also have a national philanthropy such as the Kresge Foundation, local philanthropy, St. Paul, Minnesota Foundation, McKnight, and then in terms of public dollars, the Minnesota Department of Human Services, as well as CARES Act, funding. So the overall demonstration project is just over $1.5 million. Next slide. Earlier, Director Tolsman mentioned, there's a number of folks who are part of our circle of advisors. We have representation from these different organizations. I'm not going to read them all, but from the Federal Reserve Bank to foundation partners to the local chamber, to a number of union partners, to the University of Minnesota, and state agencies, local nonprofits, who are all sort of at the table with us. And this is where they're in direct, we had talked about it as emergent learning. So we hold the emergent learning tables where we're identifying, different learnings, that we're having in real time. And the Circle Advisor is in conversation with both the program staff, but also Mayor Carter on sort of unpacking, some of this learning. So the last emergent learning table, for example, we presented data that you're actually going to see today, and did some reflection on that. And then we also talked about, as we think about, state federal policy, what are the things that in particular we should be laying the groundwork for now as we sort of head, in that direction, right? So those are just things that sort of this Circle of Advisors, have been weighing in on and helping us think through. Next slide. So to get to the core of it, I know that Madam Chair mentioned some of the mechanics here, but just to repeat, it's 150 families, $500 a month for 18 months, as well as all these participants are actually have babies in their households who are enrolled in College Bound St. Paul, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but that's our college savings account program. So there's also a monthly deposit that is made into the child's college savings account, each month over the 18 months, totaling $180 additional dollars on top of the seed deposit that the city provides, which is a $50 deposit. Next slide. So by the numbers right now, we do have 150 families enrolled. We've made just about $350,000 in cash transfers, and just under $7,000 in college-bound deposits. And obviously this goes up, every single month as we make more transfers and deposits into families' accounts. So we are fully, at the intended sort of demonstration project capacity. One thing that we like to also accentuate is that the city does not intend to continue running, the People's Prosperity Pilot, hence pilot, forever. It is really actually intended to push on federal policy, state policy in particular, to look at how does this become part of the toolkit within our social safety net. So just want to sort of clarify that before we sort of begin to go through the slides. It's like, we're not confused about like, oh, is this a city program ongoing or not? We actually very clearly state that it isn't, but how do we actually add to the science, to the research base with these 150 families to really sort of make the case. Next slide. So eligibility, folks had to have a COVID impact, be at 300% of poverty or below, which effectively could be enrolled in any type of public benefit, and then were randomly selected from College Bound St. Paul. We use sort of the standard COVID economic impact types of criteria. So it could be, and we'll get to it in a little bit, but is reduced or lost, reduced hours or lost your job, had a quarantine and therefore couldn't participate, in the workforce during that time. It could be unable to access childcare because of COVID-19, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide. So a little bit about College Bound St. Paul, since that's sort of the core of the program. This was a program that launched on January 1st, 2020. So every single participant in the program does have a baby, in their home that was born in 2020. When we go to the next slide, some of the aspects of that program, it's an automatic program with manual enrollments as well. Programs are safeguarded, means we as a city hold the custodial account. So that means no parent is actually withdrawing, out of the college savings account. We start with a $50 seed deposit, and then there's a whole list you can see there of different types of bonus deposits that are also there, from logging into the account to the baby's first birthday to, how did you participate in financial health, type of programming, or wellness, child wellness, so health, types of activities for your child, like going to your baby well baby checkup, et cetera, et cetera. Different deposits are added as bonuses, in the account. And then there'll be flexible use of funds. So you can use it for post-secondary, any other type of related expense that doesn't have to be a four-year college degree. And what we know today is we have over 3,000 babies that were enrolled in the program. Next slide. This is just a scatter plot of where the 3,000 different babies live, throughout the city. If we go to the next slide, we'll actually have a heat map, I believe, of sort of where those concentrations, babies are. So for those who are commissioners in St. Paul, you can kind of see where, where those babies are, where our youngest kind of actual infants and, babies are living throughout the city. So you see a lot on the east side, North End, Frogtown, Summit U, Rondo, and there's actually a real large pocket there in Highland Park, sort of off West 7th there, and then obviously other concentrations, in other parts of the city. But those are sort of where our youngest babies are living now. And as I, think about how the city partners with the county, down the road in your early childhood initiatives and that sort of thing, I just know we're very attuned to where are all the babies living and where are they actually concentrated as we look at that scale there of 3,000 babies born, or 3,000 babies enrolled in the program. Madam Chair, did you have a question? I saw you went off mute.
Yes, very observant. Very quickly before we move off of this program. And so how long does this, is it a 1 year until the first birthday, or does it go until they're 6, or how long does this go?
Yeah, so College Bound St. Paul will go all the way till who are babies now, up until the time they're actually 25, they'll be able to access any of the funds that get deposited into their account. So it's actually a generational long, program, that exists, and the intent is to access any type of post-secondary types of expenses. So babies, then will be 18 when they begin to, draw down, from the account, and then, they're be able to use it for any type of expense. And let's say that you don't go to college right away, or don't go to get a certificate, go to St. Paul College, for example, right away. Up until 25, you will have access, and at that point, it would get recycled, back through the program.
And how long does it? How long are the deposits made into it? You can start taking the money out at 18 if you are in a college setting of some kind. But how long does the money go in?
Yeah, so it is a $50 seed deposit at the beginning that is made. And then after that point, it is through families are making deposits, community organizations are making deposits. We have a tier, like we mentioned before, of different bonus deposits. So families can also earn on top of that seed deposit, as time goes along, both from what the city is putting in, but also community organizations, and families themselves. So it is multi-tiered there, kind of after that initial deposit.
Well, plus you have the $10 per month for the first 18 months also that comes out of the city program, correct?
Right, yep, and that's specifically for the People's Prosperity Pilot campaign, yep. So right now, we just got our year one numbers in, and, I think our largest account is $700 and some dollars that have been saved or earned, by a family just in that first year. So there's a not even 1 year old right now that has over $700 in their account. There's research from the University of Michigan that really did some research on small dollar accounts, and children from particularly low income backgrounds who have anywhere between $1 and $499 are actually 3 times more likely to go to college and 4 more times likely to graduate. So it's not necessarily even about the money. It's actually about how are we creating sort of a college-bound sort of identity within our children and in the family. In our instance, as Mayor Carter's vision on this was, how do we create a college-bound city, right? So where this is part of the expectation in our city, and sort of hearing sort of that, statistic. And our researcher is actually the same researcher who evaluated that program. He's from the University of Michigan, who, defined that 3 times more likely, 4 times more likely to graduate. And, it's Mayor Carsey's sort of the surest bet, on our children as we want to create the culture for our children to go to college.
Very impressive. Thank you.
Next slide.
Madam Chair,
I should just
yeah.
Oh, Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just along this line of questioning, thank you, Munir, and thanks everyone. I mean, this is exciting. For the college bound, I know that you wanted it to be for all St. Paul, but it's just 150 families that are piloted for this, right? Am I correct in that? And then were they not income? Was that not an income eligibility? So any family of any income was able to get a college bound. I see the Prosperity Fund is income. You have to be income eligible, but for the college bound, that wasn't income eligible. You didn't have to be income eligible. Am I correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner
Go ahead.
McGuire, the College Bound is a universal program open to anyone who has a baby that is living in St. Paul, right? So that's where we have, I think the exact number is 3,110 babies, in the city that got enrolled in the program, in 2020. So that's open to everybody. The People's Prosperity Pilot is a random selection of 150 families from college-bound families, hence why we're talking about, what is college-bound anyways, besides just talking about the name. There's elements behind it where those families are enrolled in both programs, those 150, while there's other 3,000 families or so who are just enrolled in college-bound.
So there's a connection, but it is to supplement, basically.
Exactly. So some of the unique features of our, this is jumping back to the People's Prosperity Pilot and sort of shifting away from college bound in of itself, but we're actually the first municipally run guaranteed income in the program. Stockton ran theirs actually through, while it was a mayor's initiative, it was ran through a nonprofit. So we're actually running this one through city government. Two, we're the first program that actually combines those college savings accounts and guaranteed income. Three, we're the only program that's actually uniquely focused on families with babies. As the data sort of shows, is we're concentrated in communities of color, low wealth neighborhoods across the city. We're part of a coordinated national evaluation, which we'll talk about later, but that's with other demonstration projects. And then third is that, again, our eye in the program, is to look at some of the federal advocacy for federal guaranteed income. So there's sort of a turnkey ready strategy with the Mayors for Guaranteed Income as we move forward. Next slide. In terms of recruitment, letters were sent out. There was an enrollment appointment that happened. And then benefits counseling sessions happened. And I'll spend a little bit of time on the benefits counseling. So those receiving benefits were encouraged to attend, and almost everyone did. We used the Children Defense Fund's Economic Stability Indicator tool, and I'll go through that in a second. That was sort of the main kind of benefits tool that was used. And really that tool is used to map the proximity to the benefits cliff so that families can make an decision whether to participate in the People's Prosperity Pilot or not. And again, we'll talk a little bit about those figures in a second. Next slide. So a little bit on the Economic Stability Indicators tool. This is really, basically you could, the family would meet with a benefits counselor. They would go through basically identifying some of the main things around benefits. So number of family members, income, that sort of thing. And then they were able to get sort of the baseline of like, what are all the different public benefits programs that you could participate in, at what amount. And then the benefits counselor would enter in the $500 and it would generate a report, which would basically show what would reduction look like, in your benefits, or would you actually hit a benefits cliff and lose that benefit, completely. So every person was able to go through that process, and really the Economic Stability Indicator looks at that interaction between wages, work support, tax credit, tax liability, how they can and can't fill the gap between low wages, and basic expenses, as well as sort of put some decision points in front of them to sort of think about, what they need to consider and what are the opportunity costs in participating in the program. CDF also uses this for this tool to inform other policymakers at the state level city level. I know Mayor Carter used it in the past as we were looking at, changing the minimum wage and that sort of thing. So how that would impact, benefits. But at the end of the day, it was really to help, families make an informed decision. And we have, I think, what that would look like if you go to the next slide. So for example, this would be a family of 3 right now with a, 0 monthly income. What would the $500 impact, be? So it would look at, reductions, in expenses and that sort of thing. This is just an example. So it's around different food programs, health insurance, housing, childcare. If you go to the next slide, you'll see, more categories. Look at taxes, tax credits, that sort of thing, and sort of looking at, what, the impact. And from here, the benefits counselor would talk to folks and, let them know, this would be sort of the net effect, and like, would you want to enroll in this program, or would you not want to enroll, in this particular program? Next slide. A little bit about sort of the demographics of the group. Of the participants here, 25% spoke a language other than English, which means we actually did the enrollment sessions, benefits counseling sessions in 25% of them, in a language other than English. Next slide. These are where the letters were sent versus those who were enrolled. It wasn't just letters. We did also phone calls. We actually did literature drops. We did kind of a whole bunch of different strategies, but 32% of folks who we sent letters to ended up enrolling, so 32% response rate. Our national evaluators said actually for this method it's usually around 12%, and we sort of believe that 20% higher, probably 20 percentage point higher response rate is actually because we had a relationship also through College Bound St. Paul. So it wasn't like we were just, sending a letter and, kind of cold enrolling folks, but there had been some affinity already, with their child being in the college savings account program. Next slide. What we learned there then is that we had 282 who didn't respond. That could be that folks, opened it up, later than the deadline that was set. It could have been they looked at it, knew they weren't eligible, and just decided not to tell us. It'll be a whole range, of different issues, reasons why. We learned 40 folks, said that they weren't eligible. There were 8 folks who decided to decline to participate before the enrollment meeting. 6 folks, after they went to the benefits counseling, decided that they didn't, their benefits and particular arrangement they had, didn't want to, pursue the program because of impacts on their benefits. And at the end of the day, we enrolled 150 families. Next slide. This is the specific map of where, where the different participants live. So we have folks across every city ward, significant enrollment in communities of color, low wealth communities, and then heavy concentrations on the east side, north end, Frogtown, Rondo. And if I would have been smarter, I would have put this within districts of commissioners, but I didn't think that far ahead. But if you know ward lines, which are on there, this is where different, the proportionality across the pilot. Next slide. In terms of the actual demographic breakdown, 40% identified as Black, 25% as Asian, 19% as white, 17% as Latinx, 3% as Indigenous, and then 1% as multicultural. So for us, very reflective of the city, actually probably a little bit disproportionate from an equity standpoint, at least in a good way, larger percent of Black folks than sort of the overall city population, and then a lower percentage, within sort of the white population overall. Next slide. In terms of benefits participation, I'm not going to go through all of these, but 12% didn't participate in any benefits. 88% do, of which the average number is 3 different benefits, and maybe the top 5 I'll just pick are WIC, medical assistance, SNAP, free or reduced lunch, and then Minnesota Care. So those were sort of the major sort of program enrollments that folks were in. And again, the enrolled in the program, with sort of informed decision using that economic stability indicator tool. Next slide. On COVID impacts, not going to go through every aspect here, but a lot of text and bubbles on the screen. But starting on the chart on the left, 68% were in impact 1 there, which was mostly being furloughed or laid off or reduced hours. 63% of folks were unable to work due to childcare. And then the third sort of most common reason was a closing or reducing hours for their own business, right? So they had those sort of economic impacts due to COVID. The only impact number 1 was actually 24%, but when you look at, and then 22% for only having a number 2, but then if you look at when you add number 1 and number 2, which would be they were both had some sort of work interruption and then unable to work due to childcare, was 28%. So we just want to sort of break that out, sort of what is sort of the combination of different types of COVID impacts. And those numbers on the bottom of page or on the left chart are actually more visually expressive, on the pie chart on the right. Next slide. A little bit about the national evaluation. We're working with the Center for Guaranteed Income, which is out of the University of Pennsylvania. So they're actually leading the 30-site evaluation, 30 cities across the country, and are doing both quantitative and qualitative work and looking at a number of different key outcomes. So income volatility, economic agency. So how do folks actually decide to use the dollars? Financial situation, what do they actually try to put those dollars in? Are folks putting it toward paying down debt, putting it saving, other sort of asset or wealth building types of mechanisms? But we're also looking at physical and mental health. So how does it impact individuals with this $500 a month? Like how does it actually impact their own sort of physical and mental well-being? And for us, because we're focused on babies, also looking at some things connected to parenting and early childhood development, and then engagement, and savings, in college-bound St. Paul. So there's sort of a robust national evaluation that's happening with some of the particularities of our program as well, particularly on the early childhood aspects of things. Next slide. I'm not going to go through all these, but these are some of the key learning, questions, and I'll just pick the top 3. But how can a guaranteed income function as a financial vaccine to assist households in weathering unexpected shocks? What are the pathways and barriers to guaranteed income policy take up across geographically diverse locations? How can guaranteed income be paired with other policy initiatives to generate structural change? So for us, that pairing, is with a college savings accounts. Other cities may decide, to do, other types of, pairing. And then there's a number of other sort of research questions, and I'm not going to read through them all, and you have them. Next slide. So for us, we were just kind of thinking about what were some of the kind of main demonstration project drivers, in summary. So we thought about, what's the local infrastructure, we had a national catalyst and network, so we're not necessarily doing this alone. Clear sort of program and policy strategy, the political will to do it, and then, a set of partnerships. And maybe just to highlight some of the key pieces here of different types of drivers. So not every city has, for example, an Office of Financial Empowerment, which is thinking about financial products, which is thinking about, how to design programs, like this, that sort of thing. So I think our office, played a huge part in this. We previously ran the Bridge Fund for Families, which Casey was a huge architect, of, and, we knew how to make, transfers. We know how to work with the bank. We knew sort of the legal considerations, that sort of thing. We had the technologies in place to sort of take this project and make it sort of an ongoing project. At the national level, obviously the Mayors for Guaranteed Income, played a huge role. They are really working on the policy side of things at the federal level, working on the narrative change, work. I think there's been over, 100 different, national level kind of publications, media, interviews and that sort of thing. I know Mayor Carter just on, I think Saturday morning was on, CNBC, sort of morning, morning sort of Politico talk, sharing about sort of the national work and our local work, on this. So a lot on the narrative change for the work as we look at sort of that national presence, in the work. And then they're the folks who actually worked with the University of Pennsylvania to launch the Center for Guaranteed Income, provided funding, that sort of thing. I think for us at the local level, as we look at program and policy, we knew our cash transfer possibilities. We knew the importance of the benefits counseling. With that, which I haven't mentioned so far, was actually the creation of a hold harmless fund. So folks who do have benefits that are impacted, we do have a set aside of funding to mitigate those impacts so that they aren't, fully, reaching a cliff or, damaged, in that sort of way. We want folks to, be whole through the process. And there may be things that unexpectedly happen, and we have a hold harmless fund that, is developed. We're partnering with Springboard for the Arts on sort of the narrative work. Locally, we haven't launched that, but that's where we're headed, is sort of what are the local stories from our participants that come out. And then with the Department of Human Services, we're in process of an income and asset exclusion so that, we don't have to, we did the benefits counseling, but we hope to get that actually mitigated, through that income and asset exclusion waiver, which is, for benefits preservation. Not going to go through the rest of it, but, we obviously had a mayor and a council that were behind this. The Department of Human Services was supportive. And we have, really just great partners to help us sort of think through many different aspects and implications of the work. Next slide. So with that said, all of this at the end of the day, comes back to children and families. And, I talked a lot about demographics and, the mechanics, of the program and the partnerships. But at the end of the day, what does this $500 a month, do for children and families across the city of St. Paul? How does it help weather, impacts of both COVID-19 and hopefully get out of this state of emergency to the other side where this program is still running, and the impact sort of on how an economy that isn't working, for families, or the incongruence between, maybe a family that's enrolled in WIC and the things they can buy at the grocery store or not, right? That this $500 a month makes a big impact, and gives an economic choice, to families to operate in the ways, that really make sense for them. And just holding this picture here, knowing that, this is really about the children and families and sort of the future of our city. And we really hope to look at how do we scale, replicate, this model, federal level, state level, local level as we move forward. So with that said, that is our presentation for today. And I know, I think Tina and Ling have some follow-up.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
This is really great information. I do have a question. The fact that it's 18 months gives you enough time, it's long enough that you can evaluate and figure out what's going on. But it's also short enough that when you talk about a cliff, there could be issues for these families that are used to having $500 a month, and then suddenly they don't. Or what happens to the program in general? Does it continue for the same people? Do you expand it? And I know that you've got to do all of that, but that's not a lot of time to figure out what the next steps are for this, assuming that it is successful. So how are you building that into your timeline? Because clearly you're not going to wait until the end to go, oh, I wonder how that worked. So if you could respond to that.
Yeah, Madam Chair. So we're exploring, all the different, avenues as we're in, conversation, with, the Minnesota Department of Human Services, philanthropic partners, all that. So, we're very much looking at like, what's the scaffolding at the 18+ month mark, and what does it actually take to really scaffold to that point? And, it's almost like as soon as we launched the program, that we're thinking about the 18-month point already. And that's sort of where we are now that the program, is it is up and going, and, I think that there there's pushes at, the different levels of government, to look at, what it is. I think the reality, is that, the city won't be, the permanent home of this type of program. And, the context in which we started it under, which I mentioned at the beginning, was, both COVID, but also, a lack of sort of federal leadership at that time, is that it was the right moment, to sort of get things up and going. And now we're sort of full steam ahead at the federal, advocacy, in conversation, with state partners and that. So right now we're at the point where we're not, enrolling more folks or anything. We're making transfers and running the mechanics, and it's really about setting the scaffolding for when these families get to that 18-month mark. What can we have in place for them?
Great. Okay, I have Commissioner McDonough with a question, and then Commissioner Matas Castillo. Commissioner McDonough.
Yep, thanks. I've got two questions. One is, was there any consideration or conversations? I know you do the benefits counseling to really get a sense of the cliff and are they going to end up losing stuff, but like pairing this with a financial literacy type counseling or mentoring, and using that opportunity to, I would imagine a lot of these folks are maybe unbanked or other ways where financial literacy could really help them maximize not only the $500, but potentially, going forward. Then I got another follow-up question after that, Manure.
Great. Madam Chair, Commissioner McDonough, yeah, we've looked at a whole bunch of, different types of options on sort of the wraparound, side of things. So I think for us, there's a healthy tension between sort of that definition of guaranteed income, which is unconditional, no strings attached money. So it isn't necessarily requiring folks to do that. With that said, with College Bound, we have a network of partners, particularly on the financial literacy, financial capability side, financial health, a network of partners who, we're looking to get families connected to, of which the People's Prosperity Pilot families could access that. So that's sort of how we're thinking about it. And, again, just holding that sort of definition of, unconditional, no strings attached, sort of guaranteed income with the other realities that, financial literacy, types of classes and those sort of things may benefit, some families. And it is not a required aspect, but it is something where folks can, participate in our sort of partner organizations who do offer that.
Great. Then I just wanted to go a little deeper. I think you mentioned where you have like I'm having a mental block on what you called it, but make hold fund, where is that where there's a point where maybe a participant actually might lose some benefits because they chose to participate, and you're actually giving them more than the 500 then to make up for that benefit that they lost? And are you giving them those opportunities to choose getting the benefit or being made whole, or is that something that is kind of decided upon internally to connect with those individuals?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner McDonough, so it is on a case-by-case basis. And just, for example, one of the things we ran into was, someone who was impacted with their public housing, right? And, we're looking at them and working with the PHA, Public Housing Authority, to sort of figure out what are the mitigation, types of strategies there. So in that instance, it would be, on top of the $500 a month, and then how we actually figure out what counts as an asset or what, doesn't count against, and, all the different rules. So it's on a case-by-case basis, and, in those instances, it would be above and beyond the 500, and whether we, work directly with, in this instance, for example, the PHA, or whether that's money that goes directly to the families, that's something we work out on a case-by-case basis.
Madam Chair, could I just follow up with one more question, please?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, and I know you're going to have to let the research and, to kind of help, drive kind of where we're going on this, or where you're going on this, and then, certainly the experiences of the 30+ cities. But, as I'm listening to you and seeing how this plays out, there seems like kind of like two paths to build on this, right? One is take current benefits and just convert them to guaranteed cash, which, is really not an increase in dollars. It's just changing the restrictions or requirements, or moving forward on a guaranteed income type part of paired with those types of benefits, where that guaranteed benefit is like an exclusion, so it doesn't affect those benefits. Do you got a sense of what not only St. Paul, but maybe the 30 cities, those conversations? Would the move be to just try to move towards an all guaranteed income benefit and kind of do away with all these little things off to the side, or not?
Yeah, so I think in the beginning, sort of, in that definition of guaranteed income, it's meant to supplement, not supplant, the social safety net. So for us, it's, I think, more to your second, sort of description, where it would be income exclusion, to those programs, and it would be in conjunction, with other benefits. So this is not an attempt to consolidate, benefits and then recast it, as guaranteed income.
Is that, Commissioner McDonough, did you have any follow-up?
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Modis Castillo, then McGuire and Carter.
Yeah, thank you. And really to add on to what Commissioner McDonough was asking, I hope that as you're kind of discovering all these places where the guaranteed income might harm their social safety benefit, that we can take a look at that, because we're really, if someone earning just a little bit more money is going to make them lose benefits, then we're really, we're keeping them stuck in a cycle of poverty, and we're not helping them get out. So I hope you're keeping a list so that we can go and fix those items as well, because we have to change the system. I hear from folks in public housing that are like, if I earn a little bit more, my rent goes up, and so I can never get ahead. And families just need to get ahead. Like, you just can't catch a break. And so I really love this idea, and I hope that we can expand it and go further, because when we trust people to do the right thing, they do the right thing. Don't have to put all these other things into place. So I just really appreciate your work, Munir, and really pushing this. And I hope that we're gathering those lessons learned too, on where we can fix that system of poverty that we have put into place. The one question I have, and I apologize, I have to jump over to a short at the legislature, but I just want to know is, like, what are the people saying? And maybe this is getting in the next part of the presentation, but like, you showed how they're spending it, how they're using it, but what does it mean to them? What are we hearing from the families that are getting this money?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Matos Castillo, Casey, do you want to take what are the different things you're hearing, sort of as you and Jack are connecting with folks on the ground?
Sure. Excuse me. Thank you, Commissioner. Happy to answer that question. I think, from us, we're at the very beginning stages, right? So the data you saw on how people were spending it was from the pilot in Stockton, where they're, I think they're sort of 18 months points in, sort of into their second year of the program, actually. And I think for us during enrollment, I think doing this at the time of COVID, I think for a lot of families, they were feeling a lot of relief when we sort of were going through the enrollment appointment. And we did try to make the enrollment appointment a fairly short process for families. We didn't require, documentation to prove their income, or sort of like to prove their COVID impact, sort of in the spirit of guaranteed income, where we are trusting families to do the best thing for their families. We were sort of making those appointments really streamlined and trusting families to explain their situation to us. But I do feel like the uncertainty families were facing around unemployment and income and housing costs, I think there was just a sense of relief from families about knowing that this money would be coming. I think there were also some families, we enrolled most of our families before Christmas. So I think there were a lot of families that were saying, or a number of families that were saying to us, like, now I have a sense of how we can do Christmas for our families. So I think it'll be interesting and a part of our work to sort of think through in the long term. Right now, once we get past two families, trusting that this is going to keep coming, right? Because when you reach out to a family, even if it's coming from the city of St. Paul and a program they know, it sounds a little too good to be true. But now we're into the months of distributing these funds. So I think, that's a part of our narrative work to go back to families and sort of get that sense of, now that they've been getting this, what is this doing for them? What does this mean for them? And in particular, during this economic uncertainty that we're all going through, I think will be a really interesting part of the project.
And then I would just also add, we also heard heart-wrenching stories of folks who actually left the city. Some folks, we had a family who went back to Jamaica, and we had a family, who went, had to go live with another family. I think it was in Iowa, just because COVID impacted them. They didn't have a job. They didn't have a way to do it. So they had to find ways to go back to the family and extended families. And they're like, oh, if we would have had this just, a few weeks sooner, we wouldn't have actually been, back in Jamaica. We literally, I think Casey was talking to folks in Jamaica, who immigrated here and then immigrated back, and then folks who, were going, other states where they had extended family, right? So, it's the money also serves as, in some businesses here, as an anchoring, and contributor, to St. Paul, to Ramsey County, right? It serves as an anchor so feel they can be, prosperous. So.
Okay, Commissioner Montes-Castillo, can I move on to Commissioner McGuire?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And maybe we're going to be coming to the next slide. I was just a little ahead. Like what the ask is of our county. You're working with our county people, and that's great. And I love this program. It doesn't reach to my suburban cities, which I still want it to happen really well in Ramsey, in the city of St. Paul. It reminds me of the 3K program, which I love, which of course doesn't reach out to my suburban cities either. So I just have to, acknowledge that I still obviously really support this idea and this program. But what can you, so the contribution that Ramsey County has as a partner is really in our staffing and in our other programs and everything. Are we, I'm not that opposed to it, but are we helping fund anything? And I know we're asked, I think we're being asked to help, support legislation for this. And I think we'll be happy to do that. I mean, we'll just take it through our process. But just if you could talk a little bit about that. And like I said, I mean, we like to be one county, we don't like to separate ourselves between suburb and city. And I sit on the St. Paul Children's Collaborative, and I totally support, all things, all cities. So just comment on that a little bit.
I do believe, Commissioner McGuire, I could be wrong here, and if I am, then answer it now. But it appears to me that the key takeaways and how it
are we coming to that?
Fits into this. It seems to me that is the next page.
Okay, so I'll wait for that then. That's great.
Okay, if we don't get an answer, we'll come back and we'll get more of an answer.
Great. I didn't know if that was just the end or if, but yes, perfect, Madam Chair. I'm happy to wait.
Okay. Commissioner Carter.
Chair Reinhardt, on that instruction, please put me on hold as well. Thank you.
All right. And we'll come back to both of you. I think that's what the next steps, that's what it says, the key takeaways for commissioners and next steps, and talks about our service team alignment. So I'm not sure I think that's where we are at. So Munir, if you could tell me who you're handing this off to, or if you're taking it.
Madam Chair, the director.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Pratham, I did not see your hand up there.
Okay.
You have something before we move on to that?
Yeah, just one quick thing. And if you mentioned this and I just missed it, tell me to just go back and rewatch. But for the the evaluation, are you also finding a randomly selected comparison group of folks to to compare outcomes with, or are you just studying the 150 families?
Ah. Good question.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, so we actually have kind of two different research studies going on. So one is with the University of Michigan, which is our college bound, and then we have the University of Pennsylvania one. So in our University of Michigan study, we'll be looking at college bound families who received it and college bound families who didn't receive it. So there will be a comparison group there.
And on the People's Prosperity, because I mean, it's part of the subgroup of the college bound, but still, I think, you know, to get a fair evaluation of what it is meaning, is there some comparison group?
So the comparison group is just within college bound, those who are receiving it and those who aren't. So that's the only sort of comparison group that is being set up.
Okay. And how often, and Commissioner Protham, I'll get back to you also, but how often are there going to be reports on this? I mean, do you do it monthly? Do you do it every 6 months? Because 18 months is going to go before we, you know, in the blink of an eye. And I think it's really important that we get those, that everyone that's involved, because you've got quite a few partners, including Ramsey County. How often are we going to get information on the evaluation?
Madam Chair, I think we're structuring in what does that exactly look like. We know that there'll be 6-month surveys, so 3 surveys that are done over the time, and then eventually here, I'm sure we'll be getting sort of some of the spending pattern data and, you know, that sort of thing. So you're basically getting like not the 100-day, you know, in update, but effectively, you know, it's like, you know, post sort of enrollment here where families, you know, just got their first few deposits, and we plan on continuing to update, you know, all of our partners and putting out information, you know, as we progress throughout the pilot on different aspects, you know, of the program. So I will say regularly, you will receive updates, and partners will receive updates as we move along.
And I assume, and then we will move on to the key takeaways, but when you say that they get the deposits, so I know that Commissioner McDonough commented on folks that aren't banked. I assume that in order to be in either of these programs that you have to be banked.
Madam Chair, so participants receive a RELIA card, which is the same card that is used for unemployment benefits in the state of Minnesota. So it's a U.S. bank card.
So it's, okay. For the college bound, I guess I'm not quite sure on that one, but okay. We can get more information on that later. That's not really relevant to how we go forward with this. I don't think anyway. Okay, so I don't see any more hands at this point. And I'm sure I've still got Commissioners McGuire and Carter in after we go through the key takeaways for commissioners and next steps.
Madam Chair, Director Tina Curry will talk about this. Can we do the next slide, please?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm Tina Curry, Director of Financial Assistance Services. Our city colleagues have done a wonderful job providing an overview of the People's Prosperity Project. Director Becker and I will now want to mention a few key takeaways from today's workshop. The People's Prosperity Project is a whole family approach that aligns nicely with the early childhood work, financial assistance services, social services, public health, and health and wellness administration are currently undertaking to better coordinate early childhood services across the service team. Ramsey County has multiple early childhood programs, however, accessing them can be difficult. To coordinate and increase accessibility to our early childhood programs, the county was recently awarded a preschool development grant by the Minnesota Department of Human Services. This 2-year grant will enable departments within the Health and Wellness Service team to remove barriers so families with young children can access life-changing early childhood programs such as visiting home nurses or early Head Start. Within the coming months, the plan is to establish an early childhood governance committee with representatives from the Health and Wellness Service Team Departments, Employment Services, St. Paul Libraries, and Suburban Ramsey Family Collaborative to oversee this essential work. Recognizing the importance of community involvement, representatives from the Equity Action Circle Family and Community Group will also be included in the Governance Committee. Once the grant is received, an early childhood grant coordinator will be hired. I also want to highlight a recommendation from the Equity Action Circle Family and Community Group that fits with the early childhood work and service center navigators. That recommendation is for family coaches. The family coach will address the needs of families in a holistic way, which aligns with our strategic priority, advancing a holistic approach to strengthen families. In addition, the family coach would work collaboratively with Ramsey County navigators who are knowledgeable of county programs and how to access them. Two unique features of the family coach model are, first, they will walk alongside families to ensure their needs are met by connecting them to the appropriate county service. Second, the family coach is community-based and can utilize and leverage all the other services that their agency may offer, such as employment, housing services, tenant advocacy, and financial literacy. The family coach model is a transformative approach to working and engaging with families that we look to embed in our services in the future. Director Becker.
Yeah, thank you, Tina. Commissioners, Madam Chair, I'm here to kind of represent the other side of the picture around a different service team and how we have additional alignment. You know, when we think about inclusive competitiveness and inclusion, we really realize that there's really a lot of opportunity here to align our work around the people that we are trying to uplift as we try to build our economy. And so I've been really privileged to be able to work with Munir even pre-COVID. We were talking about how to create more opportunities for people on, for instance, our MFIP program to get more financial tools and do different partnerships in that way. And so I think this is really an opportunity for us to participate in these emergent learning circles, figure out how, as we try to build a more competitive economy by bringing more people who've traditionally been left on the sidelines, how we can sort of leverage the work that we're doing as a county, and really to show how maybe being paired with guaranteed income, some policy changes on our end and program changes might allow us to generate some real structural change for our families. And so I think the investment here is just that we want to make sure this isn't just an alignment with with human services and with Tina's office, but also around the work that we are doing around economic competitiveness and building a more inclusive economy for our residents. So we're happy to take any questions from you about you know, Ramsey County's role at this time.
I guess one of the obvious questions is these, you know, what you're talking about is obviously very good. It goes beyond just the city of St. Paul. But as far as these 150 families specifically, is this, are they automatically included in this, or is it just something that's being done at the same time, but not necessarily connected to these 150 families for either Tina or Ling?
So I'll go first, Tina, and then you can go. Madam Chair, when Casey and I have met, we've been trying to think about how we could layer some learnings and do some additional pilots. I'll have to be honest, the numbers are pretty low around how many families are participating in the project that are also, for example, on MFIP. But doesn't mean that maybe there's not an opportunity though to do some learning. And so we're continuing to explore kind of to Commissioner McDonough's point. I mean, if this is really a layered on additional resource, this might be an opportunity for some of those families who are trying to, you know, get additional training or do some different pivots around work reemployment. Now they have a little more margin in order to be able to invest in themselves over these next 18 months. And so those are the areas where I see opportunities to learn from my perspective.
And Tina?
I would add, Madam Chair and Commissioners, from a health and wellness service team perspective, hopefully that we can include some of these 150 families in the work we're trying to do with our early childhood initiative and make sure that they're accessing all the available programs that are out there and available to them that the county has to offer.
Well, I will obviously hear from other commissioners as well, but I think it's imperative that somehow these 150 families are included because again, the $500 a month is going to be there for 18 months, but in order to get their feet on the ground and move forward, there's probably going to be some skill building. There's going to be other things that need to happen to move them forward so that they're self-sustaining or don't need as much help anyway. But I also think that it adds a layer to the evaluation because it wouldn't probably be all 150 families, but you've got those that are in the college bound program, the subset of the 150 that are in this program, the guaranteed income program. And then you have the things that we are doing so that we could see how it all fits together because, I mean, we are, as the county, primarily the public safety and public health safety net. And so I think that for the county role anyhow, that we need to really look at how it fits together. I do see that County Manager O'Connor and then Commissioner Ortega has his hand up as well. County Manager O'Connor, I'm assuming that you want to answer a question rather than ask one. So I'll turn to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll share a little bit now. I was going to save some of it for closing comments, but I think it's relevant to the discussion going on a little bit. I think part of the question for the county in its role moving forward, and this goes back to our strategic planning conversation even a week ago, is that to truly do unconditional transfers correctly, it needs to be a transformative and not a programmatic thing that we do. And I sent you all a repository of research on this. I can tell you I've spent many, many hours of my life on this topic generally. I deeply believe in the potential value that it holds. And it looks a little different in different areas. At extreme levels of poverty, it helps families better allocate resources to the needs that they have immediately. And research supports that many times. As you move up the income ladder, it provides flexibility to people to move between the types of stories we hear a lot where Ling will tell us, if only we could have had someone trained, but they kept their job because X, Y, Z. And so there is great opportunity. It will take nothing short of transformative change in the way benefits get processed at the state and the level of political buy-in that would be required. And so I kind of wanted to answer your question with that level of we could be involved at an incremental level, but I think a broader question for the county is incrementalism good enough for our community and where we might want to go? And I kind of laid out a little bit maybe of my initial thoughts on that there. Thank you for letting me jump in.
Well, and I think it's important, one of the reasons that the evaluation and taking the incremental approach within a pilot program is that you have proof that it does make a difference, that it can be transformational, but it's not going to stand alone. And so that's how come I'm pushing the fact that we have an opportunity here to show that the incremental can turn into transformational. I have Commissioner Ortega, and then I'm going to check back with Commissioners McGuire and Carter to see if they have questions. Commissioner Ortega.
Yes, I'll be brief. Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I think this is a great program as a pilot program. I also think what's very important about this program is that it is unconditional guaranteed income. We've already laid a lot of regulations and rules for a lot of the services we provide to folks. Having said that, and that's off the top of my head, I think to me that's important. I think we should play a big role in advocating for this at the federal level. We have NACO, we could put it in their platform, et cetera, et cetera. I think this could be transformative on a national level in terms of income security for people. And it's a good beginning, and I like for us to be strong advocates at a national level and work with the city to see how we push this at the state and national level. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, all these past comments have really helped me understand this. And as I've said before, I support this program. I'm just curious how I talk about it in the countywide perspective, which you've given me some good tools on that. So just to be, just so I'm clear, we aren't investing dollars only in people and in our systems work, right? I mean, there's not a budget line that's going to fund this. It's really about our work that we're doing in Ramsey County and want to do in Ramsey County that's helping further this work. And am I correct in that?
That is my understanding.
Mm-hmm. And I see people are shaking their heads. Okay, I was just curious about that, and I couldn't be more excited about all of this work. So if we do it in St. Paul and then we take it everywhere else, I'm all for it. We just need to get this work going and expand it, and we should be promoting it at AMC, at NACO, and everywhere. So we'll stand by. I'd like to stand by as partners with you, and we'll have a legislative discussion about that. Thank you.
Commissioner Carter, did you have a question at this point?
Yes, I will just very briefly add that, yes, ditto to the last couple of comments. We want to be certain that as partners, we are moving this forward on a state and federal basis, wanting to understand what the platforms are that the city is active on currently and how we take advantage of this big idea for transformation as close partners. Glad that we're at the table, glad that we are sharing and learning. On the sharing part, I know that we were a part of a national pilot at one time that provided additional funds to MFIP participants. Again, that was conditional. I'm certain that there are some things that we've learned about the basic impacts of the cliff effect, as well as other areas. What money is spent on, it's a shame that this idea can be entrapped in misperception about the need, about the manner in which funds are used, even about the deserving, the deserving people who actually are taking advantage of this program. But pandemic can help us break through so many things. There is one silver lining or two that we can look to in terms of the way in which it's helped us to accelerate. I did want to ask about any of the learnings from that original pilot that the county did in MFIP, and whether in fact we've been able to translate any of that learning forward. I just want to mark that there is some learning there, and I don't need a huge answer at this point in time, but wanting to make sure we translate. And finally, just to ensure that we are doing that work together. This is a partnership that, yes, can recruit other cities within Ramsey County, that, yes, can lift this forward for the future. And we all hope that we're able to accomplish getting this work embedded for transformation. So just on that, did we learn anything from that pilot would be the question.
Elizabeth or others that are on the line, if we don't have an answer today, in fact, I suspect that we wouldn't have a full answer today, but it seems very clear that we would like to have that come back to us.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to check in quickly with Ling and Tina to see if, Tina, you've been doing the work or the MFIP piece longer, and from where you sit, if you have any observations from that. Ling, you're newer, but may have heard stories or things through workforce. Is there anything to add now, or is it more something you want to follow up on?
We'll follow up, Commissioner, unless Tina, you know something more than I do at this point.
That's fine.
Commissioners, what I would add, one of the key learnings that we had was that just a small additional supplement in income really helped individuals meet their basic needs. I mean, there was other learnings as well, but just so that individuals could pay their bills and do the smaller things that sometimes we take for granted, I think that was really a powerful learning lesson.
I appreciate
Okay,
that. I
well-
would suggest that we mine that learning so that it can be applied as we move forward and doing the work to lift this up. Thanks.
Well, to lift up this and to lift up the work that we are doing that is
Sure.
aligned with it as well. So that will be something that when I do the overview, we'll come back to. Commissioner McDonough, you had a question or a comment.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Comment. You know, we've heard some really enthusiastic responses from some of my colleagues, and that's great. But I do want to share my thoughts here. I'm really intrigued about the, you know.
Oh dear.
We can't hear you, Jim. Nope, we can't hear you. Do you want to try to go out and come back in? Okay, I'm trying to see if he's still on here. I think he's gone out and is trying to come back in. Let's see if he, okay, he has joined now. Let's see.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Well, you may lose me again. I just had connection. So I don't know where I went on. I'll just start all over. You've heard some real enthusiastic responses from some of my colleagues. I don't think it's unwarranted by any means, but I'm not there on the enthusiasm. I'm really more intrigued. This is early on in St. Paul's program. It's early on nationally with these 30 cities. You know, I'll raise a couple of things that are, you know, I really want to, you know, see what the research says, the impact on families, hear their stories after 18 months, you know, moving forward. You know, a couple of things that always come to rise up for me on, you know, I think that we do need to move into transformative stuff, as Ryan's talked about. You guys have all heard me say this. But we also need to find a way to ensure that we're really using data-driven, research-driven, so we know that the impact is real. It can make a difference in moving folks and uplifting folks in our community, making transformative, life-changing events for generational poverty that's occurred in our community. But part of that means we need to be able to find ways where we can coalesce and focus too, right? Having 100 programs out there for individuals to get connected to and thread the needle and navigate does us no good. And this might be one of them. I don't know. And maybe 500 is the right amount. Maybe it needs to be 1,000. Maybe it needs to be 1,500. I don't know. But I'm intrigued enough to find out. And I just wanted to make sure I, you know, shared that with you as we're moving forward here, because I'm not sure that we're ready to start advocating for, you know, huge federal changes until we can really demonstrate that we're getting huge changes within our families and individuals in our community.
Thank you. And actually, Commissioner McDonough, I had the same thought, and that's why I think it's very important. I'm not ready to go to the federal level or to even the state level this legislative session, because we need to be able to show the results. We need to be able to show that evaluation so that because there's going to be learnings from both the city and from the county in what we're doing on what works, what doesn't, what would we change. And that's the whole idea behind a pilot project. But I am excited about it. I am enthused about it. But there are steps that we must do. And I think when I talked about trying to align our work in health and wellness and economic growth and community investment service teams with this 150 families at a minimum, and it can go beyond that. But I think that if we really want to be able to make our case with data to back it up, which I think is going to be imperative, that we need to have that evaluation, we need to have that alignment. Okay, do I have Commissioner Ortega? I don't think you took your hand down.
No, can I just respond?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, my comments were made, of course, given that we complete the 18 months of the program. I mean, that's,
yes.
that was obvious. That's number one. Number two is, if we have unconditional guaranteed income, you could start stripping away all of the bureaucratic red tape that now costs a ton of money. in terms of mean testing everybody over the myriad of programs we've got. So that's where my thinking is going. We're probably already spending as much money with all the means testing that we do for all these programs. So that's where my thinking was going. And I think that once we do the 18 months, and we have, then we could tweak, we could look at it and analyze it, that it makes sense to advocate for it at a federal level, because this is big dollars. And we need the transformation is really at the federal government. It's not at the local government in terms of sustainability. Thank you.
Yes, and that's the way I understood it as well. Looks like we have just a little bit more. Oh, Commissioner McGuire, you have your hand up again.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just appreciate my colleagues' words, Commissioner McDonough, Reinhardt, and Ortega. Yeah, I get all excited about the idea of early childhood initiative and the systems change, and I do think we need to have a very serious, obviously legislative conversation about how we would support work like this, mainly in a pilot. Just support the pilot at this point, and then see how it goes and what we can do to support this kind of transformational change. But I wanted to say that you're right. It's too soon to go all full-fledged in on everything. But I just appreciate that awareness and calling that out, because I know that we have to have many further discussions on this to see where we might, where we might be of benefit in this process. So thank you.
I think it just comes down to pent up enthusiasm and desire to move forward. But the fact of the matter is that these programs and what we're doing in our service teams and what the City of St. Paul is doing in its programs is that pilot. And so I think we're excited to see the outcomes, and we are hoping that they are all positive and that we can build upon those. Okay, Commissioner Carter.
And we have to walk and talk and chew gum at the same time, because the pilot certainly does need that support, and pilots across the state, if possible, across the nation, of course. And while these pilots are proceeding, if in fact this one is 18 months long, we need to be looking to, unless it's a total disaster, the opportunity to continue the pilot. So from that perspective, I certainly am willing and would like us to be thinking about how we lift this up, even at a state and a federal level. I think it's going to take some conversation. We're all talking about a pilot right now that we're hoping will result in transformation. But to continue to support that work, like I said, we have to walk and talk and chew gum at the same time. Thank you all so very much, all of our staff, and connecting to the city for the work that we're doing in tandem. That continuity, so that we don't bring the plane down, land it, and have to start all over again, is very important. Thank you.
Well, and that does kind of bring us full circle. 18 months is a long time. 18 months is a very short time, and we need to be planning ahead as we go forward. And speaking of looking ahead, I think, is this Elizabeth, are you taking the collaborative learning agenda, basically the last slide as far as information, or who is taking that?
Tina and Ling, did you guys have anything to add to this? Otherwise I could close. Okay. Next slide, please. Tina or Ling, did you guys have anything to add?
Nope.
Okay. Why don't we go to the very last slide? And Madam Chair, if I may, I could do some closing remarks, and I think the county manager may have some remarks as well. First of all, I just want to thank all the feedback of what we heard today. I think we agree that data should drive our decision making, but also the personal stories, the quantitative and the qualitative data. There's this definition of insanity where you keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And I really have to commend the City of St. Paul, and particularly Munir, Casey, and their entire team in leading courageously in the space. The county manager did send some research if you want to read more about unconditional cash transfers. There's well-grounded research, policy research on this, as well as early evaluation indications there. So we highly encourage you to read that. It goes back to where I've said all along, where there's times where we need to lead, there's time where we need to partner with community when we convene and when we're doing direct services. And I think this initiative and partnership hits in all areas. We are partnering with community, unique foundations and funding streams on this creatively in this work through our circle advisors. We are convening at all levels, and the question of whether federal, state, or who we convene stakeholders, that's going to be an important part regardless of what stage we're at in this. And the role of where we play, where we impact, where we can influence. We talked about this last week, and I think we need to keep that in mind. And then the part about direct services, this is where our health and wellness service team and EGCI coming together is really important. We do need to innovate if we want to transform and do things differently. And if we're going to stick to our core values of our residents first perspective, as well as well-being, opportunity, prosperity, and accountability, we need to start doing things differently. So again, I really want to thank our guests, the City of St. Paul leading the space. We do have a role to sustain and scale this going forward, and ensuring that all of our Ramsey County residents have an opportunity for this as well. And so with that, I'll hand it over to County Manager O'Connor for any additional remarks.
Just a few brief ones to say. During the budget process, you'll hear more on some of what Tina highlighted today from the recommendations from the Equity Action Circle. There are pieces of our work that align with what we're hearing as we're working with community about ways to take the current system and make it work as well as possible. I think a lot of what we saw today is a question of, should we only be doing that, or should we be thinking about a different way in which the system overall functions, which is a big conversation with many tentacles to it, as the board explored today. And so I think it's a both and, in that we look at one while doing parts of the other. And so we're going to move pieces that we can. It was exciting for the first time for you to hear today one of our EAC recommendations come into a board workshop. There were like 140, I think, that were made as a part of the process we've done. And that's with our organization as we're thinking about our next biennial budget that we begin to build. And then alongside that, we step back and need to continue to think about, do the current programs serve residents in Ramsey County to the way we want them to? Will be that question that we have in front of us as we go forward. So I appreciate all the time on an important topic, and one that until last year wasn't politicized, and then kind of became a part of like presidential primary conversations, which adds a layer to it that is not helpful when designing effective ways to serve people always. So hopefully we can continue those conversations in a productive way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I would really like to thank our guest presenters, Munir and Casey, and also Tina and Ling and Elizabeth and others that helped put all of this together. What I have looked at here and see as an exciting opportunity where we're all watching to see, okay, what happens with this 18-month program, but not waiting until 18 months are done. And so the things that I see as coming back to us is, first of all, when there's evaluation materials available, and I think even at 6 months, it's going to be important for us to check in. But it's also the evaluation of how what we're doing as a county is interacting with what the City of St. Paul is doing, because in order to make this go to a larger level, or to continue the pilot program and to make that transition, because that's really what this is about, is transition if it works. But we need to be able to show that. We need to be able to prove that. Otherwise, it just sounds good and it doesn't necessarily get us where we need to be. There are a number of things that could end up being legislative issues. The income exclusion, how do you do this so that you're not actually costing people more than what they are getting in return? And that's been an issue with the system for years and years. And so there are a lot of questions that need to have answers, but in order to answer them, we need data. And that's what this evaluation is about. And how can we show something that is real progress in those incremental steps, turning into something that is transformational? So the things that I heard beyond that is, first of all, we do want to get more information back, and however we want to do that is, I think, fine. We can also include it in a future workshop, but on what happened with the MFIT program that the county had done regarding additional income, and what came of that, what were the learnings from that, and when exactly was it? Because I vaguely remember, but I don't think it was like last year. But It could have been. Last year was kind of a blur for me right now. Also, the importance of the county partnership with what is happening in the city of St. Paul and how we can make it so that it would be something that would be valuable throughout our county and beyond that. What are we going to take away from the learnings and the evaluation that we want to advocate for at the federal level or at the state level? And realistically, most of that is going to be at the earliest probably in the next legislative session, because we need to have data to back stuff up. Otherwise, we don't have as much success. And it also does show, and this goes kind of back to what we were talking about earlier, as far as showing how this can save money. This can save taxpayer money and have better outcomes, just like we talked about in crime prevention and the work that we are doing there in our first workshop today. And so we need to be able to show that. But to begin with, you start out with things that are side by side. And so the savings isn't there from the very beginning, but you have to make that transition. And that's what I am so hopeful of this program, and that's what it will show. It's on a small scale right now, but I think that the opportunity is there. If you invest in people, they will invest in the community as well. And so, but we've got a lot of work to do in partnership. And I hope that the city of St. Paul does understand. What I heard from all of the commissioners is we are in partnership with you on this because we are the social safety net. And so if what you're doing works, that helps our budget, that helps our families. And so you get, a double bonus there. And that really helps us all. Okay, and so I will ask, I think that I covered everything, at least the basics. If there's anything that I missed, commissioners, please feel free, or anyone, please feel free to let me know that. Okay, I don't see any hands up, and I just again want to say thank you. This has been a really informative and inspiring presentation, and we wait to see what the results are. So thank you very much. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chair.